So piecewise functions are functions that have several formulas or equations in them, and you'll use one of those formulas for certain x values, and you'll use a different formula for other x values. Okay, and so you'll take those two pieces and you put them together into a graph. So it's kind of like a Frankenstein graph. So let's look at an example of that. I have f of x is equal to x plus 2 if x is less than 1. And if x is greater than or equal to 1, f of x is going to be negative x plus 1. So let's see if we can break this down so we make sure we have a good understanding of kind of what a piecewise function looks like. So I'm going to graph these guys separately. So I'll start with this x plus 2. So to graph this, this is in slope-intercept form. So I know my intercept is 2, and my slope is 1. Okay. So it looks like that. There is the x plus 2 graph. And then I have the negative x plus 1. So my y-intercept there is 1, and my slope is a negative 1. Okay, so put some dots on there. We'll make that. So there's my negative x plus 1. Right, so I've graphed both of those functions. And then let's take a look at what this part here is saying. So it says use this red graph, the x plus 2 graph, if x is less than 1. So x is less than, or x is 1 right here. And so the less than side is on this side. So I don't want that side, okay? Because I only want the part that's less than 1. So I'm actually going to cut that part off since we don't need it. Okay. And then this green one, the negative x plus 1, is good for x greater than or equal to 1. So here's our x is equal to 1. And we want the greater than part, which is this side here. So I'm going to get rid of this side on the left. Okay, so there's the part we want to keep. And to make a piecewise graph, I'm going to push these two together. Okay. So there is kind of the idea behind what a piecewise graph is. So I don't think anybody wants to do arts and craft graphs every time we have to graph a piecewise one. So let's look at another way of tackling this now that we have a good idea of what the concept is. All right, so the first thing I do when I graph a piecewise function is I put a number line on there, just down below the graph or above the graph, either one. And I put what I call a fence line in here. So I look at where I'm switching the functions, and I know where I switch functions by looking at this piece of the domain. So at x equals 1, I'm going to switch from one function to the other. So here's where x is equal to 1. Okay. And so I put a fence line there, so I know one function goes on one side, one goes on the other. And what I do next with this number line, or this fence line, is I said, okay, so x is less than 1, I'm going to use x plus 2. So here's less than 1 on a number line. So I put my function, that's my y equals. And for x greater than or equal to 1, I'm using this negative x plus 1. So I put it on this side. My next step is just to graph these. So if I graph the one on the left first, x plus 2, I find that y-intercept of 2, and it's got a slope of 1. So if I put a couple points on there, I can sketch that line in. And similarly, I can do that on the right-hand side. So my intercept here is 1. You notice that this line doesn't extend all the way over here because you can't cross over the fence line. You have to stay on your side of the fence with your function. But I can at least just hold my pen here to find the 1, and my slope is negative 1. So I go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1. And then that gives you enough points on the correct side of the fence to be able to draw my line. Okay, and then there's a last step here. So once you have those on there, the last step is to figure out what's going on with this just strictly less than or greater than or equal to. So if there is not a little equal sign underneath the less than or greater than, you're going to put a hollow dot. Okay? So if you have either less than or greater than, these get a hollow dot. And if you have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, these get a solid dot. So this first part, this function that came from this left-hand side gets a hollow dot because it doesn't have an equal to sign on here. And the one on the right-hand side does have an equal to sign, so it gets the solid dot. All right, so that is just kind of a brief look into how we're going to do that. Come back to the next video and we will work on one together.